In the small coastal town of Baylor, a place known for its crashing waves and humble hearts, lived a 14-year-old boy named Eli Sampson. His voice was the kind that could hush storms. People said when Eli sang hymns on Sundays, even the fishermen at sea could hear him over the roar of the Pacific. Eli's life wasn't easy. His father was a tricycle driver who earned just enough for rice and dried fish. His mother, Lorna, was the church choir leader, a woman of unwavering faith. Their home was a one-room shack made of bamboo, but it echoed with songs of hope every dawn. Every morning before school, Eli would help his father wash the tricycle and sing softly while he worked. His songs were prayers in disguise, pleas for strength, gratitude, and a dream he barely dared to say aloud, to sing for the world, not just the Sunday crowd. But dreams are fragile in places where survival comes first. One evening, as the rain poured outside, Eli's mother came home with a worn flyer. "Eli," she said with a smile, "there's a national singing contest in Manila. The winner gets a scholarship to a music academy." Eli's heart skipped. "Manila? That's far, Mama." "It is," she said softly. "But maybe, it's time you see how far your voice can really go." His father didn't speak right away. He leaned against the wall, his eyes distant. "Manila is full of temptation, son. Not all songs glorify God there." "I know, Papa," Eli said. "But what if I can bring light there? What if my song can remind them?" The silence that followed was heavy but hopeful. His father finally nodded. "Then sing for him, always for him." 2 weeks later, Eli stepped into the bustling chaos of Manila. The city was loud, unforgiving, and bright in ways Baylor could never be. The audition venue was a grand theater packed with dreamers, some in glittering outfits, others in tattered jeans, all with eyes fixed on one chance. Eli stood quietly among them, clutching his guitar. His old jeans were faded, and his slippers were worn, but his faith was firm. When his turn came, the judges barely glanced at him. One of them, a stern-looking producer with silver hair, muttered, "Next." But when Eli strummed the first note of Amazing Grace, the room changed. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried purity, something untouched by fame. By the end, the audience was silent. Then, a slow, rising applause filled the hall. He made it to the semifinals. A week later, in a quiet corner of the contestants' dormitory, Eli overheard two older singers talking. "They say the producer's looking for someone to sing his new song for the finals," one whispered. "Yeah, but it's not just any song," the other replied. "He calls it, the Devil's Song. They say it's so dark, no one dares sing it." Eli frowned. The Devil's Song. Later that night, a staff member slipped a sealed envelope under his door. Inside was a letter. "Greater than Eli Sampson, we've selected you to perform a new composition for the finals. It's called, The Devil's Song. If you can make the audience feel its power, you could win." Eli's stomach tightened. He stared at the sheet music, melodies twisted with sorrow, lyrics full of vanity and rage. It was everything opposite of what he believed. He couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he knelt beside his bed. "Lord," he whispered, "what do you want me to do?" The next morning, he visited a small chapel near the venue. The pews were empty except for a janitor mopping the floor. Eli sat quietly, staring at the crucifix. "They want me to sing something that praises darkness," he said aloud, though no one was near. "But if I refuse, I lose everything." The janitor, an old man with tired eyes, stopped mopping. "Maybe, son, it's not about refusing. Maybe it's about transforming." Eli looked up. "Transforming." The man smiled faintly. "Even the Devil's Song loses power when sung by a heart that belongs to God." The final night arrived. Cameras flashed, judges whispered, and millions watched live across the country. The host introduced him last, calling him, the boy with the angel's voice. As Eli stepped onto the stage, his hands trembled. He could feel the weight of expectation, but also the quiet strength of prayer. The lights dimmed. A single spotlight fell on him. He strummed the first chord, haunting, heavy, exactly as written. The audience leaned in. The melody spoke of despair, pride, and fall. It was unsettling. But then something changed. Eli paused mid-verse, closed his eyes, and whispered a silent prayer. When he sang again, his voice lifted, not with defiance, but with redemption. He changed the lyrics right there on stage. Instead of, "Greater than, bow to the flame that never dies," he sang, "Rise from the flame, where truth still lies." The orchestra faltered, unsure what to do. The judges exchanged startled looks. But Eli kept singing. His voice soared, turning darkness into light, bitterness into confession. By the final chorus, tears filled the eyes of people who moments ago only sought entertainment. The haunting melody had become a hymn, and when he sang the last note, soft, trembling, holy, the theater stood still. Then, thunderous applause. Even the stern producer stood, wiping his eyes. He changed the song, he muttered. He made it beautiful. That night, Eli didn't win the contest. The judges disqualified him for altering the arrangement without permission. But it didn't matter. The next morning, every major news outlet in the Philippines ran headlines. Filipino Christian boy transforms Devil's Song into prayer on live TV. Clips of his performance spread across social media. Millions watched, shared, and wept. Pastors preached about him. Musicians called it a miracle in melody. Even those who mocked faith admitted something supernatural had happened, something good. Eli returned to Baylor with no trophy, no prize money, and yet, he carried more than victory. He carried purpose. Months later, as the tide lapped against the shore, Eli sat beside his father, both watching the sunset. "You turned that song into a prayer," his father said quietly. "Do you know what that means?" Eli smiled. "Maybe it means the devil doesn't get the last verse." His father laughed softly, eyes glistening. "No, son, not when God's the one holding the pen." Years passed. Eli grew, studied music, and began writing songs of his own, songs about faith, doubt, and the everyday fight between light and dark. He was invited to churches, schools, and eventually, to the same theater where he once stood trembling. This time, he wasn't a contestant. He was the headliner. Before his final performance, he looked out at the crowd, thousands of faces, young and old. Reporters called him the boy who redeemed a song. But Eli knew it wasn't him. It was something greater flowing through him. He took the microphone and said, "That night, I learned that music is a weapon. You can use it to destroy, or you can use it to heal. Tonight, I want to remind everyone that even the darkest melody can find its way back to light." Then he sang, not the Devil's Song, but his version, renamed, Redeemed. The lyrics were new, the melody softer, but the power was the same. When he reached the chorus, the audience sang with him, thousands of voices united in a single, trembling harmony. Greater than what was meant for pain. You turned to praise. What was born in fire now shines with grace. When the last note faded, the crowd erupted, not just in applause, but in tears, in prayer, in gratitude. After the concert, a young boy approached Eli backstage. He couldn't have been more than 10. "Kuya," the boy said shyly, "I want to sing too. But my friends say church songs aren't cool." Eli knelt, smiling. "You know what's cool." The boy shook his head, turning pain into something beautiful. "That's what real music is." The boy grinned. "Like you did," Eli chuckled. "Like God did through me." Years later, long after fame faded and the cameras stopped following him, Eli continued to teach music to poor children in rural towns. He started a small foundation called Songs of Light, dedicated to training young singers to use their voices for faith, not fame. In every class, he told the same story. That song wasn't evil, he would say. It was just lost, just like people can be. But when you sing with love, you can guide them home. And every time he said it, his students listened, wide-eyed, as if hearing the miracle all over again. When Eli turned 30, he was invited once more to perform at a global Christian music festival in Jerusalem. The host introduced him with reverence. "This is the Filipino who sang the song the devil wrote, and turned it into a prayer." Eli stepped on stage, the golden city glowing behind him. He took a deep breath, his guitar glinting under the light. For a moment, he thought of his father's tricycle, his mother's hymns, the old janitor's words. Then, smiling, he whispered, "This one's for you, Lord." And he sang again the song that once belonged to darkness, now radiant with grace. This time, the world sang with him. Even years later, when people asked him, what happened to that original song? Eli would laugh softly and say, "I guess it was rewritten." Because in truth, he never destroyed the Devil's Song. He redeemed it, and in doing so, he reminded the world of something timeless. That no matter how dark a melody begins, when sung by a heart full of faith, it always ends in light.